Welcome to The Secret Witch Show, the podcast providing a safe and alchemical altar space of conversations which help powerful women escape a half-hearted, spiritless society and rediscover the freedom of living a wildly magical life. Every other week, we explore how to cast aside the wounds of shame, guilt, and fear connected with fully being yourself, so you can grant yourself permission to stop hiding, ground soulfully back into your body, illuminate your whole soul desires, tend your soul, rediscover and reclaim your powerful gifts, express your magic, and manifest your wildest alchemy. There's no better place to become who your heart longs to be. This is where we will guide you into liberation. I'm your host, Nicole Barton, and I'm so excited to dive in. Welcome, magical ones, to the show. I've recently been noticing how many magical women hide and shame themselves for feeling different to mainstream society and feel kind of burdened and burned out from trying to fit in rather than loving their own full, unique expression of their wild. So I've been creating a powerful portal for you to gather with your sisters and share intimacy, love and illumination as part of our growing sisterhood where all of you is welcome. If you're longing for like-minded souls, join us in our Sisterhood of Secret Witches on Facebook by searching Secret Witch Circle, and you'll also get to join us for the tender first step of the path, our live monthly new moon ritual. All of our group and one-to-one crucibles are full at the moment, so our free Manifesting with the Moon ritual is a great way to begin walking the path. Later this year, I'll be birthing a new group crucible, Invoke Your Wild Woman, for which the details haven't yet been revealed. But if you're resonating from the name and feeling the call to love, honour and express your wild woman, register your interest via our website and I'll add you to the list so that you're the first to hear when more details are available and enrolment is open. You can do that at nicolebarton.co.uk/programmes. On The Secret Witch Show today, our guest is Sian Marie Pilkington. Sian is a woman of wordcraft, mother of what some see as many, a space holder in ceremony around the blood mysteries, a proficient retreat facilitator and herbalist and full spectrum birth attendant energy worker. She works as a birth doula and mentor, reiki master, theta healer, holds pregnancy retreats and conducts ceremony for those in the childbearing years. Making her second appearance on the show, Sian beautifully explores birth as a powerful portal for soul transformation, exploring how birth opens us up to a descent into our feminine soul and how this creates a deeper connection to truth, love, and our own power and magic. She provides some beautiful initiations for the journey from maiden to mother, which make an illuminating episode that is relevant to all women who long to reconnect to their souls, regardless of whether they are mothers or not. Let's dive in. Welcome, darling Sian. I am delighted to welcome you to the show again, and so beautifully timed as we're today at summer solstice. So it couldn't be a more magical time to record this episode, and really excited to be sharing this day with you. So welcome. And also you've been on before, so you're a second time guest, which is the first second time guest we've had. It was a specific request from our Facebook group as well. So to come on for you to talk about birth, which is your medicine. So really juicy. I'm really excited and looking forward to this one. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me back.
Absolute pleasure. I guess it's just opening up that around our topic, really. So our topic is how birth is a powerful portal into soul transformation, which is feeling really juicy. And I often start by inviting our guests to share their kind of personal journey. So I don't know if there's anything in that you want to start there with. I have a feeling we spoke to some of this a little bit, but it wasn't the focus of our last episode. So there might be something new here. So I'm excited to hear.
Well, last time we did speak about how my first baby really landed me in my body because I felt the real raw power of the goddess move through me after being really heavily dissociated through my teenage years and into early adulthood with an eating disorder and having no clue of my moon cycle, and really having no connection to much other than outside affirmation. All of a sudden, I found myself 5 months pregnant with this child who had kind of remained hidden to me. And I completely immersed myself in like blind faith, and went on to have this extremely rapid birth where all of the misconceptions and lack of trust that I'd previously had in my own body was kind of obliterated by this really swift arrival, which very much felt like it happened to me. But at the same time, that kind of obliteration was what I needed to land me full force back into my body, and also to kind of really recognize that a lot of the issues that we have as witches, as women, is being too much in our head and not enough in our bodies, you know. And so I was young, I was 23 when I had Isabella, and she didn't mature me completely because I was still a maiden, but she really did help me to understand the transformative power of birth in terms of how important it is to be in the land of your own body, the sacred land of your own body, and to put trust in its reparation and its ability to yield and repair and kind of give back to the world.
Ooh, so much is already coming up for me as we're just diving in here. And it's interesting. I think if we'd had this conversation maybe a year ago, I might have felt quite triggered by, by that. Because my experience as well was very much that of kind of coming back to my body. But for me, it was like a real resistance. And it's funny, actually, the other day I had a shamanic healing, and like all my ancestors were like really, really, really resistant and like bossing the shaman around. Like, you need to move that candle, else we're not going to work with you anymore. And it's like a sense of, there's this real deep resistance in me, but just wouldn't trust that flow to come through. So I'm curious what you're going to say about that, because it's almost like our experiences were both that of coming back to our bodies, and yet yours was one of kind of landing in trust, and mine was resisting and kind of deep trauma.
Right. Well, I mean, I can't speak to exactly what it is for you, but when you speak about this, what I come up with is that men placed themselves into birth and began to make the rules and regulations around something that was always women's work. My deepest and furthest back memory in birth, lifetime wise, is of being, I believe I was in Central America, and I was in a clay house, and my naked body was in front of a woman who was birthing. Excuse me. And I was heavily pregnant too. And I was bringing the water to her and sitting in front of her, and my kind of pregnant belly was almost touching hers, and I was digging out a hole into the ground in which her baby was going to be born. And what I get from this memory all the time is like the very deep sacred nature, the interwoven nature of women working with women in this really symbiotic nature. Like, we don't really need to have words. I've been in birth spaces before where I've been able to hear non-English speaking mothers next to me having a hard time, and everything inside of my body has known that I could go tend to them without having a shared language, because we have that as women. From women we were born, and to women we remain connected through this everlasting red thread. And so when we have a masculine energy, which the shaman probably wasn't masculine, but you may have taken that shaman as a leader, an expert, an authority, somebody outside of yourself who's leading you to healing in that realm. I wonder if there was just a piece of you that wanted to kind of say, no, actually, I have all of the wisdom inside of myself, and it's not for you to kind of guide me there. So that, like I said, that's not necessarily what it is for you, but that's the first thing that comes up for me, this active resistance that we have as sovereign women, of which is reclaiming our own birthright, is to actually lead ourselves to the underworld and back up again, and not have another person do it, just have them witness.
Yeah, I love that. It's interesting because all the ancestors that came in were masculine. So something in there, I'm not quite sure. I still haven't fully integrated it yet, but just it just occurred to me. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense as well. I think particularly for the secret witch who's listening, there's probably kind of that deep fear of the masculine, which kind of plays into birth quite a lot as well. I think certainly that was my own experience, and also my sense of my journey. Talking a lot about my journey now.
Good.
Yeah, but my sense of it was also that I was very much in that, like at the time, pre-birth, that kind of masculine ascension path as well, kind of like that evasion of being in the body. So again, I think that's for me one of the biggest gifts of birth and my birth trauma, which sounds weird to say there's a gift in it, was that kind of feminine descent.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Which also
My
feels
te
like that's what you're talking to as well, in a way.
I feel like birth is the biggest descent, and I actually feel like there's layers to it that occurs before birth even gets here. I feel like we can break it down into preconception, and I feel like we go from this heady idea of having a knowledge or an idea about a baby, or possibly not, but everything about conception and going into pregnancy is mind-based. And then as we kind of begin to receive that soul in towards our own body, and bring them into our consciousness, we have to descend with it. And that often looks like going into dream time with baby spirit, right? And then we're at the beginning of pregnancy, there's this kind of yin yang thing that's happening where the spinning ovum princess kind of spins in her swirly skirts and sips in the light. The ovum is making sound as she spins. It's been recorded. And as the sperm enters, there's light in the head of the sperm, and she selects him and opens and receives. And there's this yang spark, but this very yin reception of the light. And she creates from that space. That's the deepest mother knowledge, to create to bring thought into form, right? And then through the beginning of pregnancy, we're no longer able to kind of associate with people in this fast beta brainwave state of conversation. People seem to see us pull back, and we find our motherly protective role. And oftentimes we get really quiet and still the first trimester of pregnancy, while we kind of have this spinning universe occurring inside of us, and we're getting to know this new layer of ourselves. And then I think when we approach birth itself, there's this term out there of pregnancy brain. People at the end of pregnancy are deemed stupid, quite honestly, sometimes, like they can't hold a conversation. And when in actual fact, what's happened is we've descended into this really earthy, rooted, fertile soil, and we're in the deep delta brainwave state. We're in this very deep meditative kind of DMT feeling dream state, and that's where we need to go to access the hormones to go into labor, to continue and flip over over the edge of this cliff. But like everybody around us at all these times, like preconception, they want to ask us when we're having a baby, what the baby's going to be. Are you excited? Are you not? At the beginning of pregnancy, everybody wants to have a slice of that. Just before labor, they're asking us so many questions, and they're keeping us up in the rafters in our beta brain, and it's not conducive to us tipping over the edge. And that's why women naturally seek refuge and sanctuary, and kind of can oftentimes look like they are removing themselves from society, which ties into that idea of the hysterical, crazy old woman archetype, right? But it's not. It's our deepest wisdom, knowing that in order for us to go to that descent process and retrieve what we need to retrieve in birth, which is a new self and a baby and a new relationship, quite possibly, we have to kind of move out of the rafters and go down, go deep down.
Wow. Just as you're speaking, there's just this big sense of magic, like this, yeah, just this wisdom that feels like, for me, certainly I had a sense of like the bit about my body's just growing this baby and I'm not really having to do anything about that, and like that kind of drawing in. But yeah, from there on it was just lost. So I'm curious as to what creates it that way, that gets lost. And I suppose especially the secret witch, who often kind of doesn't see the magic, doesn't see her magic as well.
I think it's caught up in this program that we have as women to believe the masculine, to believe the men, and believe the fathers and the patriarchy and the experts and the professionals, because we've been sedated and medicated out of our way of like trusting our own ability to do the thing. And so I see what I've seen very, very frequently, and this isn't just in hospital birth, it's in home birth also with certain midwives. I have seen women have a very solid grasping through a really nourished pregnancy. By nourished pregnancy, I mean all parts of her were nourished, where she's gained confidence in herself, in her body, in her baby, in the process, in the spiritual evolution process of it, in the physiology of it. But then what's triggered when she walks out of her birthing space, or when an expert comes in, is this student archetype, or the little girl, the good little girl who wants to please the teacher or please the mother or please the father, and she gives over her sovereignty because she wants to be saved in the moment when the deepest transformation that could happen in birth is the savior of her own sovereignty, the savior of herself, like the ability to expand so far out into her power. And that's really scary. You could apply that to so many times in life where you're teetering, knowing that you have full power. And I think of this as orgasm. I think we spoke about this last time. The amount of women that do not allow themselves to fully fall over the cliff edge into like biggest orgasm, because the power of that is extreme and it's a lot for us to hold. And so I think sometimes at the base of it, what comes up is that women give over their power because it's too much to imagine going there and holding that. And there's people that are just waiting to take it.
I absolutely love what you've just said there, because it feels like the secret witch is like, that is so something that comes up so often for the secret witch. It really, really makes a lot of sense. And I can see that's exactly what happened in my own birth back before my descent into soul. Was that kind of, I think there's the good girl, but also that like the big part of my own shadow was that kind of helplessness, that sense of, yeah, like I just can't do this. And that's been one of the biggest things. We talk about birth as a portal to transformation. That's been one of the biggest things that I've reclaimed from all the trauma that I created, I guess, by not embodying my witch queen, if you like, is the archetype that we're walking towards in this path.
Yeah, totally.
Gorgeous. Yeah, no, I love that. So how let me just fit into my next question actually. So we talked about kind of that fitting into a linear logical box, I guess, that kind of sense of the masculine. Actually, there was a question that came up around that for me. There was something that I read, because talking about kind of sovereignty and the masculine, I read a really beautiful post, because given what you just said about the masculine, it's almost like there's a sense of the masculine are creating this in a way that's kind of we're victim to, that creates birth to be this traumatic process. And I totally hear what you're saying there, but I'm also curious because I saw a beautiful post that you shared the other day, and I love your post. Your Facebook is amazing. So I just drink it in. There's a beautiful post about men being kings and like really holding us through birth. So I just wondered if you could speak to that a little bit, because it's almost like, again, that kind of rise into sovereignty for men. So yeah, I'd love to just touch on that if you could.
Right. Okay, so one of the biggest tragedies, should I say, that occurred mythologically or perhaps even realistically was the raping of the well maidens many, many, many years ago, when Avalon was surrounded by the maidens who took care of these sacred wells. And at one time, the knights and the man, the masculine, they all took care of those well maidens because they understood her sacred role in taking care of these huge wombs that were the wells. And then at some point, something got skewed and the well maidens were raped by the men. And the masculine became no longer the knights who protected, but the perpetrators, the enemies. And women went from being revered and held high and holy and sacred, to being victims and to being possessed by the masculine. And I think that men, the masculine, they still have this deep ability to be the protectors of the well maidens and to retrieve our trust and to be the ones that do not safe, but who kind of hold an energetic boundary around us so that we can do our holy work. And these men have been pushed to the sidelines of birth for so long because the old ancient midwives knew, the masculine, the ones who raped and pillaged, that this was not their space. So the women kind of held the birth space, and the men were pushed further and further out, only to be brought in to be the saviors, who were also the rapers, because they were the obstetricians who were saving the day but abusing the women. And so the real men, the real knights, the ones who brought the light to the sound, the one who brought the light to the women and made this the child, were also kind of evacuated from the space along with the abusers. And what that has done is disconnected our men from the holiness of the women, from their ability to bring the thought and the light and the sound to form. So when we connect with men during our pregnancies and we begin to elevate them in their role as these light bringers and as the knights of the situation, and actually have an embodiment of the goddess, because within them is the mother, they came from the mother, then we begin to bring them back into their rightful role as the knights and the kings of the experience. The knights and the kings of the experience do not save or try to control the space, but they hold that protective boundary, and they witness and they kind of kneel on bended knee to the woman as she brings this child forwards. And what happens, my teacher Wapio spoke to us many years ago about the concept of the archangel of birth, and I'd seen it before she said it. So when she spoke of this, I could apply it to the places where I'd seen it in undisturbed birth. And I see it all the time now. Once you've seen it, you can't unsee it. This looks like the mother and the father being so deeply connected. And actually, it doesn't have to be a father, it can be a partner, but it's that other half, right? When the mother and the partner are so deeply connected through birth because they're not being disturbed in their process of oxytocin merging them and melting them together and creating this orgasmic bond, then when the mum births the baby, what happens very naturally and instinctively is this partner will always kind of like bring their arms around and just contains this new triad that's just occurred, that's just been born. And in this bubble is that oxytocin, that hormonal physiologic state, which is also promoting the bonding, but it's bringing us back, and it's like helping us to remember that the woman never needed him to do this, but that protected space was what she did need. And it helps him to be involved once more in that kind of like holy order.
Wow, there's just such a power in that, I think, especially for the secret witch, who often we only kind of polarize the masculine into this kind of patriarchal, as you were talking about, this kind of feared patriarchal figure. It's just a beautiful kind of union that you've just spoken to that really touches my heart, because it's and again, this is again part of that soul transformation in my own experience, I guess, because I never would have said that before I'd given birth. And it's not even like my birth had that beautiful experience, but it's led me deeper into my feminine, which has had me kind of be able to begin to question that masculine feminine polarity and the dynamic, and how it can be created from this place of union rather than this kind of victim place, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, I think we have to begin to start to take responsibility for that union, because men are very emasculated in birth, and oftentimes because the woman doesn't trust him to do his work and to show up in a very authentic way. And if a woman doesn't trust him through her pregnancy to do this when it comes to birth, then she will just hand it over to another man or another masculine counterpart. And then that further extracts him from the process and further separates us in our partnership and union. So the work actually is never in birth, the work is never in birth. The work is always in the period of time before we have a baby. And that could mean preconception, ideally, but definitely through pregnancy. Like this communion that happens and the healing that happens has to be prior to birth. Otherwise, everything that's unhealed shows up in that space. And that's extremely difficult for us to navigate unless we're really well resourced at the time.
Yeah, beautiful. If a woman's listening who is pregnant, what is it that she can do in order to kind of, I guess, begin to reclaim this process, this portal, as a powerful portal to transformation?
Totally. I mean, I really think that having some sort of I want to say therapist, but I don't mean therapist in the traditional manner. I mean somebody that speaks to you and has counsel with you is important. I would begin by doing something that we call a time spiral, which is going back through the timeline of your life and marking, like just writing down everything that feels like a pertinent memory. For some people, that could be their very first memory, their first blood, their first kiss. It doesn't matter. It could be anything. Just write them all down and then start to review them and look at them and why, and assess, why did that come up for me as a pertinent part of my timeline? Have a look into that. What did that mean? How is the relationship with your mother? What was your birth like? What do you need to start to unpack around your birth? Do you know anything around your birth? What stories were you told growing up about birth? How has that impacted you? For example, my mother never fearmongered about birth. She was so matter of fact and blasé, but it also was a non-entity almost, because it was just what she did. And my grandma, oh, I had a baby and then I was washing the floors for the midwives. There was nothing sacred brought into the conversation around birth for me either. And so when I realized that I wanted that, when I wanted some ceremony around it, I had to unpack my ideas of being extra. And I'm like, it was like a complete remembrance for me when I began to create ceremony for all these women. And then when I began to go into ceremony for myself, it was a complete remembrance of something very old and ancient. But there was these parts of me that were like, oh God, if my mother knew, like, oh, people, why do I need all of this stuff? And then when you get to birth, you have to need what you need and want what you want and do what you want and need. So all of these things, like really reviewing your timeline of events through your life and seeing what stands out, because that will give you hints as to where you need to go deeper and explore and seek counsel through that. Clearly, I'm a birth worker, and I think that having a birth worker at your side is a really great thing to have, but neither do I think it has to be a doula. Choose somebody, an old auntie, like whoever it's going to be, and your journal, make that the space that you review all of these big feelings that are coming up, burn the things as they come up, create some little rituals and ceremony that can be so simple. They don't have to be fancy, but like marking these rites of passage that you've clearly picked out through this timeline. You know, it could be something as simple as your first day at school, and there might be something in there for you that alerts you to why you are feeling disempowered.
You've really just hit the nail on the head there, because my first day of school was when my dad left. So there's something there, something there in terms of like trusting that masculine process. Yeah, interesting. But before we go there, if we're going to go there, I just wanted to speak to just that process of like feeling that you were weird somehow because of these gifts, because I think again that is also part of the secret witch's feeling about her witchiness. So again, it's like the pregnancy almost like shows you these different areas where we kind of struggle as you know, women who maybe don't know their power and magic, where they're kind of feeling that weirdness, the pressure of being weird, that seeking of approval almost. Yeah, there's something in that, and it strikes me as birth being representative of all of that, really, because it's like the ultimate cycle of creation, isn't it?
Yeah. And stripping down, like there's nothing that's more magical and earth-based and honoring of the witch than to be stripped completely bare and just show up with what you have. Like all of these tools and cute, like the robes, the cards, the tarot, the wands, you know what I mean? All of the things, the drums, they're beautiful, but they're just sometimes crutches. And when you get to the very last threshold, the very last gate of birth, there is nothing left except for your raw power in your body and like this obliteration process.
Yeah. Beautiful. As we talked a little bit to ceremony and ritual, I wonder if there's anything in terms of that you can recommend for women at home who are like, okay, I'd quite like to begin this, and obviously they're kind of secret witches, so they like ceremony and ritual. Is there anything specific that you can kind of recommend there?
Are we talking specifically pregnancy?
Good question. I was wondering that myself as well. Yeah, I think it's kind of both, isn't it? There's pregnancy and I guess birth. There's something around that kind of actual process of birth for me as well, and that being a process of soul transformation. But it's up to you. We could maybe go there after, because we just talked about pregnancy.
Well, like for me in birth, the whole ritual is the birth experience itself, and it's just before it that is important. Like through, again, I'll repeat that I think that the work is in pregnancy, because the birth just unfolds when you've done the work in pregnancy oftentimes. So during pregnancy, connecting with your baby as best as you can. And some women really, really get stressed out about this because they're just like, I can't find my baby. Like my third baby, I was just getting into my doula work, and also she wasn't coming in for me, she was coming in for her dad, so it was really difficult for me to connect with her more so. But you can do journeys, like if you like to do guided journeys or drum journeys or something, trying to get into a shamanic space of mind where you can locate your baby it's such a wonderful ritual, and it helps you to feel like you are finding out about your baby, not somebody at every ultrasound or every midwife appointment that's telling you about your baby. I really enjoy burning rituals as well. Through pregnancy, so much comes up to the surface, and it can feel so much to hold and kind of witness and deal with, that the act of physically burning it as it comes up feels really cathartic. And the element of fire, although we think of the element of water being with the mother because it's the womb and the water and the emotions and that deep cauldron of the body, I actually associate fire quite a lot with the mother, like that realm in the Celtic wheel of the South, where we're at the full moon of our life and we're in the full bloom of our life and we're in creation, and that fire, expansive energy. So using the element of fire can be very transformative to the things that are coming up and help them move along. And the mother blessing that we spoke about before in the last podcast, I believe, is that's the amalgamation. That's kind of like the climatic point of saying, hey, this woman is going into a rite of passage. She's going to be stepping through an initiation. And initiations, rites of passage, they should and need to be witnessed. It's one of the most fundamental helps to women, to human beings, that we used to have that's been lost. Being witnessed in a rite of passage allows us to move on to the next stage without fuss or fancy, really. And so the mother blessing allows us to gather really our most trusted women, our most trusted people who we can call on through birth and postpartum. And we get to be witnessed and held and seen and celebrated and elevated, because too often in this society, women are seen as sick. And what that does is it makes us sick. And we need people who are going to see us as healthy and vital. And that makes us healthy and vital. That trust and faith that they have in us. So the mother blessing is like the ultimate ceremony, for going into birth.
And did you talk about the mother blessing ceremony and what that is?
Sure. So women were always celebrated through their rites of passage. The first one really being the first moon, where women from the community, the elders and the mothers, would come together and they would walk her through or over a threshold and ask her to relinquish her maidenhood. And she would often be adorned and prayed over and drummed and sang to. And because she was asked to relinquish something, she was proving herself able to step into the next space. And it's a very similar thing with a mother blessing. So I've facilitated many, and I've had my own. And for me, I didn't have mine till my fourth baby, and it felt like really the missing link. We came together at a spring equinox, a few weeks before my last baby was born, and I chose all the people that had an effect on me coming into my power. So that was all of the old witches that had taken me under their wing, and my daughters were there too. The little ones were there to bring joy, and we all wove ourselves in with red string, bringing in our matrilineal lines to bring in the feminine force and power. And then they kind of offered me intentions. So they gave me each a bead, which was woven onto a birth necklace that I wore during my birth. They created, it was actually a dream catcher with all of their intentions and a rattle, which was them kind of gifting and bestowing upon me their creation, their own creativity. We did a salt bowl ceremony. Yeah, we did a salt bowl ceremony, which is an offering to us, to the salt, of wishes and blessings. Again, everybody told a story or a poem, some words of wisdom and affirmation. There was a meditation read so that I could connect to all of them and to my baby. And it was just this overwhelming feeling of being celebrated and me not being infantilized, because I didn't need anybody to baby me through this, but I needed to be brought into this fold, and I needed other women to say that they saw me, that they could see my own power, my own strength, and that they had faith in me. And that was the mother blessing is such a deep transformative and reclamation of an ancient practice that was really practical in nature as well as spiritual.
Yeah, that is just so beautiful. I got chills as I was listening to you describing that. It's just so magical and powerful. And I can feel some envy, some birth envy.
Yeah,
so
I feel that.
yeah, maybe, yeah. But no, totally beautiful. And I think if I have a number two, then I will will definitely be doing that to celebrate. And actually, I'm at the moment just leading a group of women. Probably this whilst this is being released, I'm just leading some women through the reinitiation of feminine mystery. So each of the archetypal kind of blood mystery, kind of reclaiming those points of power, because really one of my own points of kind of reclaiming power wasn't necessarily birth, but the birth was the catalyst into all of it. It was where I began to see the deep wounds that had kind of surfaced and expressed through my birth, and reclaim the power from those.
It just feels so good to hear you say that, because what's coming up in my mind a lot recently is how we're made to feel like positive birth experiences are fluky or lucky, when it's like our basic birthright, and it's the base form of birth is for our bodies to open and yield and give birth. And I think that the more that we cling on to this idea of birth being lucky or fluky, if it goes well, is taking us away from this ability to open into this like blissful state that birth can be. Doesn't mean painless. Blissful does not need to mean painless. Sometimes when we're in our deepest grief bodies, it's the most extraordinary bliss, because like the deep well of wisdom and emotion that comes over us is such relief and orgasmic, right? So yeah, I'm so glad to hear you say that, and to know that you want something different for yourself, and that thing that you want for yourself is in you. It's like so in you and there, and it's there for the taking. And I don't want anybody who listens to this to ever be of the belief that it's not, that it's just that it's just a fluke. It's really not. This is the way that it's meant to be.
Yeah, I love that. And I think also just seeing that, and it takes a lot, I think, to be able to go back and unpack what happened and kind of see it as a wound that helped you to descend into your gifts. But that sense of like, that was actually almost like a soul contract that I came here to live out, in order to then see that my gifts are to help reclaim power and magic, and to reclaim those for myself. So yeah, it very much feels like it was an important experience for me to have had. Otherwise I wouldn't even be here talking to you, in terms of the Secret Witch podcast wouldn't even be a thing. So there's it was really just that kind of powerful portal of transformation. So I guess if women have had kind of traumatic births, what would you say to them in terms of obviously you said, this is something that is innate within us all to be able to create differently. But what would you say to the women who maybe have had birth trauma?
Okay, well, there needs to be a safe space to talk about this. We're really missing that. Oftentimes I'll be facilitating a ceremony of some sort, and there'll be older women around, like grandmotherly ages, and they suddenly feel this safety around them. They're with these younger women who are talking about birth or postpartum, and they suddenly feel this like expansive energy of safety to speak the things that they never spoke because they couldn't find a place to speak them. Talk therapy is unreal. Like the ability to sit with somebody who truly is non-judgmental. There are people that are trained in just birth story listening for this reason, who are non-judgmental, can completely open their heart and their ears to everything that you've got to say, so that you can access and express sacred rage that comes up after trauma, which is a very deeply repressed part of the woman, of the witch, of all women. We've not been allowed to be angry.
I love that you've described it as sacred rage. And it's funny because when I was in hospital, that sacred rage, and I was just thinking as you spoke to it, like that wild woman element, that wild woman archetype definitely came out in me. And again, it's like that typical instinct is to almost go there and shame it. And actually what they said, they actually started to tell me that they were going to monitor me for postnatal psychosis. And I just kind of laughed. I just was in so much shock. It's like, I've just given birth and it, there's all this like sacred rage. And yeah, it was quite interesting.
I mean, I have a really strong connection, affinity with the archetype of the hysterical woman because it's very rife in my family. On my maternal side, many of my like aunties, the elders, were either institutionalized. One of them had electric shock treatment after a miscarriage because of her grief. And this idea that we are crazy, that we are unstable, and also that's a bad thing, is something that really triggers me to bring it out of myself and others more so, because it shouldn't be a hidden part of us. These things, when we are able to personify that and allow it to come through us, it dissipates. An emotion only lasts for 90 seconds when it's felt in its entirety. So if we're allowed to do that rather than it being repressed and hushed by the fathers, then we can move through that a lot quicker, right? So this is why this talk therapy is really important, like finding a truly non-judgmental and safe space where you do not have to be bothered about their triggers either, is extremely healing. And sometimes if you don't have that, what's coming up for me now is the idea of recording yourself saying it and then listening back yourself and letting yourself hear yourself truly at what that was that came up. Like chances are you're going to find some inner child stuff in there as well. Like the reason that you're so angry is that there was something that pertained to when you were younger, like and then we can go. Inner child work is like transformative in and of itself. Self-mothering is all about coming back to the little one inside of you and mothering her so that you can mother yourself and then go on to mother yourself through birth and postpartum also.
I love that. Actually, there's something in that, isn't there, around that kind of soul transformation piece around, like, as we're initiated into mother, it's not just, well, I suppose if we've moved through the other archetypes, there's a kind of self-nurturing element, isn't there, in the mother?
Well, this is the work that I'm in completely. Like, aside from my birth work, I've mentored with Sarah Doran Wilson, who is the founder and creator of Maiden to Mothered work, the journey of Maiden to Mother. And it is nothing about stepping over into mother as biological mother. It's all about stepping fully into your archetypal mother, she who contains the other, she who can root down through her feet and kind of respond, overreact to the world around her. When we go into birth, it's very difficult for us not to react to the things that are going on around us. But when we're deeply anchored into inner mother, we can so much easily go into our body, into our roots, into our deep delta brainwave state, and respond to our own inner needs and the things that are coming through our own body, rather than reacting to the things that are being pressed in upon us.
Yeah. Really, really feel that. Gorgeous. So this is often, I guess, yeah, in for anyone, like you say, the mother archetype is powerful, but particularly as we do kind of move into birth and yeah, reclaiming that is so powerful.
I think it's probably one of the number one things for women to explore before birth is how deep into inner mother are they?
Mm. Mm. Yeah, beautiful. Mm. And I guess did we talk to kind of embodiment of the mother archetype? We talked about the mother blessing. Is there anything else around kind of practical ways that we can begin that embodiment of the mother archetype?
I'm not sure if I understand the question, so I'm just going to sit with it for a second. Practical ways to embody the mother archetype. I mean, it's in the work. Um, it's in finding out where you're still in your maiden self, like where you're still in people pleasing mode, where you're still giving your power over to others by asking them to fix you. You know, it's the work rather than the tools and frills and fancy. It's in the basic practical work that you're doing within yourself. um I do I mentor women through this process because it's long and deep and it can be really hard. But honestly, at the other side of that, when you have met your inner mother and know what she looks like and know where to find her, and when you know who your inner maiden is and you know what's bothering her, you know how to find her, you know how to soothe her, then you embody the mother like nothing else. Because you can be both. You can see who the maiden is and you can love her.
Mm. Yeah, beautiful. Kind of, yeah, that's gorgeous. Got a sense of like the queenly energy of the mother as well in some ways.
Totally. You know, when your baby comes along, that when your baby arrives, all of this work prenatally through the birth stands you in good stead for postpartum, because you know what this is like once you've had a baby. There are so many opinions once more, and we're in a really vulnerable, open, wide state, cold space actually, after being open so wide that heat has left us and we're cool. And when we're vulnerable like that, people can take control of us, and the autonomy that we have around raising our own offspring can kind of be offset. And so, yeah, this like deep embodiment of meeting and being in the own mother archetype through pregnancy and birth allows you to go and mother the way that you want to without being force fed information and without us getting too much into our head about things that are not really a problem.
Mm. Yeah, I'm just really feeling a sense of like, again, coming back to that being a powerful portal into soul transformation. It's like us really just coming home to who we actually are, is what I'm hearing. Mm,
I mean,
beautiful.
even if we don't become biological mothers in this life, the full bloom peak of womanhood is in motherhood. It's in being mother and being queen. And this is the prime time of our life. And if we miss this, then we potentially grow into crones who feel very embittered and like lost and angry that we lost out on that prime time.
Mm, yeah, beautiful, beautiful. There's something around shame that I wanted to speak to around birth, because I think a lot of people can often feel shame in the birthing process if it didn't quite go as they desired, or I know some of my women have often talked about shame of that kind of stigma of like, oh well, it wasn't a natural birth, or if they had a cesarean section. And I just wondered if you could speak to that a little bit, because I think that'd be deeply alchemical for some people.
Sure. Like our ability to be gentle and tender with one another is, it's like at a waning point. But I think that a lot of the shame that comes up around birth oftentimes has a connotation to the feeling of being violated and having to somehow pay gratitude to it. Like
Mm.
our bodies are that. I mean, that's a really deep wound for the feminine, that we are violated but have to pay gratitude to it, that the men would rape and hurt us but we have to be thankful to them because they provide for us, you know, or they have the say so. And so even if we're not consciously aware of it, my feeling is that maybe there's something to that. Like, we have to protect the abusers, and that can create a really kind of like split thing within us, especially as witches, you know, priestesses who are coming back to wholeness. How could we let them do that to us? But oh my gosh, what would we do if we didn't let them do? What would have happened if we hadn't let them?
Oh yeah,
um
yeah.
but also, like, the witch wound is such that women turn on one another. I mean, that's happened for time immemorial. That's what happened at the stake, right? We had to turn one another over to save ourselves. And so this deeply rooted competition that came out of patriarchy and out of like abuse of women still lingers within us. So I think sometimes we feel shame because we were in some sort of competition, truly, like truly authentically. There was a part of us that was in some sort of competition, and we felt like we lost. And those who felt like they won are able to kind of gloat a little bit if they want to. At base of it, though, women always came together to heal. And even when women have positive birth experiences outwardly to other people, there can still be things that really were bothersome to them. And so in this space of feeling shame, I wonder if we can sometimes just question ourselves and get curious and think, oh, that person that we've heard had a wonderful birth experience. I wonder what it is that she's not saying too. Let's find some compassion for one another and curiosity. And like, we need to get out of the space of presumption around other people's experiences and more into a space of compassion.
I love that. It's like that kind of, yeah, bringing it, alchemizing fear into love again.
Yeah, well, that's
Yeah.
really hard when we're triggered. That is really hard when we're triggered. But like, unfortunately, the work is that when we have triggers, it's our responsibility as mother archetype to go into those and find ourselves resourced with the people that we need to help, who are not going to trigger us, so that we can move through that. And we don't have to be like placing the blame on our sisters constantly for the things that are coming up
Mm.
inside of us.
Yeah, beautiful. And I think that actually brings it kind of back to full circle. We're talking about our wombs being that portal to our gifts. Those triggers are kind of like the place is calling for our own love in order to be able to, yeah, be able to alchemize and reclaim our power from our birthing wounds, if that makes sense. Mm. So I guess if we're triggered, that's always a good place to look and bring love to, so that we
Yeah, but we
can,
don't have to, neither do we have to be alone in it. And I think when we're in
yeah,
shame space, when we're in that kind of spiral of shame, we feel like we can't bring help in when we feel triggered because we're ashamed of the trigger itself. Like, it
yes,
makes us
yeah,
less than, you know, like it makes us unworthy of people's time. And there isn't a person out there that's not walking around with a trigger.
yeah, absolutely. That's why I always say all is so, so welcome to all of my women listening, because it's just so important to allow all of us to express. And that's really what this whole path is around, like moving from suppression into full expression, whatever that looks like. So yeah, so, so important, and so, so important because it leads into us transforming as well. Beautiful. Yeah, gorgeous. Well, we're coming up to just over or before an hour now. So I don't know if there's anything else that you feel that would be useful to explore, that we can complete on, or yeah. Otherwise, I'll ask you something else.
I feel like we've covered so much.
That's the one thing I guess that women need to hear if they're walking away from this. I've already heard so much, but if there's anything else.
The exploration of the rites of passage. Like, go back through your life and see where the rites of passage have or have not been honored, and then figure out what it is that you need to correct that. So if there was no celebration for the first moon, do something there. Allow yourself to have fully expressed celebration of the rites of passage that have been and gone, so that you can move into the next ones fully without feeling like a fraud or like you've skipped past something that's really deep and important. Birth does not need to be hard. Birth is an initiation. And whenever you go down through the gates to go to the underworld and lay fallow for a little while you expand and come back up, there's going to be really hard things about that requires of you that you leave big things behind. Sometimes that's a fear, sometimes that's a substance, sometimes that's a person. Allow yourself to go down through the difficulties of those gates, but understand that coming back up doesn't have to be hard, that the birth process itself can be the final culmination of a lot of work, and it can be blissful. And my body is no different to yours. I've had these 4 really pleasant, beautiful birth experiences, and it wasn't because I was made different to you. You know, my body is your body. We can do this, and it's your birthright. Find yourself well resourced and supported.
That's so beautiful. And as you were speaking there, just occurred to me, like, this isn't just about birthing children. This is like birthing everything, that descent and that coming back up. Magical. Thank you so much. Where can people find you, and what are you working at the moment that we would love to share?
Sure. So you can find me at mother.becoming on Instagram. Also at the Enchantress as well. I believe these links are going to be provided, so I won't spell them out.
Yeah, they will.
I do many workshops. I'm a birth worker. That's my mainstay, but I also am a ceremonialist. And so the ceremonies are in person, but my birth work doesn't have to be. I mentor women on this maiden to mother journey, which is specific aside from birth. And that's for all women who want to kind of reclaim and remember and re-engage with both the little girl, the little inner maiden who needs soothing, and also for us to meet our true inner mother and break down all the barriers that we have with her, so that we can truly embody this deep archetypal mother self, and that will translate to your birth experience without a doubt. So I definitely do that remotely and in person, but remotely. They're the 2 places to find me. My prenatal birth work is always available also. And I'm local to Calgary here in Alberta. So for one-on-one in-person birth support, it's usually within a 2-hour radius of where I'm living.
I wish that I lived near you. If I was going to give birth again, that would be magical. So
I think that where I live, I think I'm kind of close to you where I'm from back home.
Really? Interesting. Yeah, magic. Well, I can't give birth in the next 15 days, which is when I know you're coming. So but if I was, then that would be amazing. Beautiful. Thank you so much, Sian. This has been amazing. I loved chatting to you and sharing solstice with you as well. So thank you.
Thanks for trusting me with your story. It's been lovely to be here.
Just adored this episode with the magical Sian. Here are my takeaways. Birth is a powerful descent into the sacred land of your own body, which initiates you into trusting yourself, your power, and your body. It's an initiation into leading ourselves to the underworld and back up. Men have made rules and regulations around something that was always women's work, and this can create trauma, but it also doesn't mean that we're victims to the masculine. There's a beautiful union that can be created as we welcome kingly, protective warriors into the birth space to hold and witness us, which is a transformational healing in and of itself. It is important to do the work in pregnancy. The work is never in birth, so that you can be relaxed and open as you transition through birth. You can do shadow work through methods like a time spiral, which she explains in this episode, and a ritual and ceremony that consciously initiates you into the phases of the feminine life cycle, as well as connecting to your baby. We fear being the hysterical woman, which has had us suppress our beautiful wildness in birth. We also suppress our sacred rage. We think we have to play the role of good girl. Moving through our truthful emotions without disruption is really helpful, and inner child work is powerful here in pregnancy. Positive birth experiences aren't fluke. We are built to open, yield, and give birth, and it can be helpful to have a birth story listener if you've had a traumatic experience instead. The mother archetype is a powerful one to embody for all women. She's rooted to the earth and knows how to respond rather than react. And she's the one who births all of creation into the world. So working with her is deeply powerful and magical, especially for a witch. Our triggers are the place we can reclaim gold from our wounds, but often we dismiss them due to shame. It's important we open to sharing our triggers so that we can reclaim the gold from them. If you'd like to get the show notes and links for everything we've chatted about in this episode, head to www.secretwitch.co.uk. If you know a secret witch who would love this episode, please share with them to help them liberate themselves. And so you don't miss out on next week's episode, head to your podcast app of choice and hit subscribe. Thank you so much for listening. I'll see you next time.